Hugs and kisses to all my friends out there. This is your host, ID Jester. Thanks for checking out my video. Do appreciate it. This is going to be part 3 of our role-playing experience video series. Hopefully you had a chance to check out the previous 2. And hopefully you're able to understand that role-playing is something that anyone can do of any skill level whatsoever. It's something that you should invest your time in and also participate in if it's something that sounds interesting to you. Shouldn't be scared of role playing. You shouldn't be afraid. Role playing is nothing more than telling a story with a group of friends. But I'm sure there's some people out there that are still a little hesitant, a little afraid that they're going to make a fool of themselves, that they're going to do things they shouldn't do, or they're not going to know what's the difference between good role playing and bad role playing. And hopefully you checked out episode 2 where we talked about that and gave some specific examples. But you're still a little afraid to actually try role playing game because you're afraid that you're going to make mistakes, that you're going to kind of embarrass yourself and not do what you should be doing. So in this episode, we're going to talk about 3 of the biggest things to think about to avoid when you're doing your role playing to make you a better role player in general. So we're going to talk about these 3 things. And number 1, and this is one of the biggest things that happens when you go to do your role playing, especially for newer role players or players that are not experienced with role playing games, and that is staying in character. During your time when you're at the table and you're gaming, or if you're doing it online, whatever your situation is, staying in character and playing that other character is super, super hard. It's nothing easy to do. And the reason for that is everything that you see, everything that you hear, everything that you say is working against you because you see all of these character sheets. Everyone has character sheets spread around the table. You see rule books all over the place, rule books for the game system. You see tons and tons of dice. If I'm rolling dice, I must be playing a game, right? You see tons and tons of dice. Everything you see, everything you experience while you're role playing is working against you to remind you you are not a fantasy person in a fantasy world. You are not the starship captain on the bridge of the Enterprise. You are not off in some faraway land trying to solve a murder mystery. You are you. That's who you are. No, that's not what you want. But unfortunately, your environment and everything you do, everything you see, everything reminds you that you are you and not this other person. So staying in character is super, super hard. Again, the dice, the character sheets, the rule books, everything. I'm not currently traveling down a dark and damp cavern. I'm not currently in an ancient tomb. I'm sitting at my friend's kitchen table or I'm sitting at my desk playing online. So your environment, everything you see, everything you experience, I got to go turn the lights up. I got to go get something to drink. I got to do all this is reminding you that you are you and not this other person. So trying to stay in character is super, super hard. It's having it so that everything is working against you. Everything you see, everything you hear is working against you to remind you that you are you, not this other person. So staying in character is super, super hard. Just keep reminding yourself that you are role playing, that you are playing a different person. Every time you say I do this, I do that, is when you're describing your situation to the dungeon master, well, hopefully refresh your mind and say to yourself, I am an elf, I am a dwarf, I am a cleric, I am a magic user, I am a starship captain, I am an engineer, I am a whatever your current genre of role playing is. hopefully that'll put you back into your envisionment and your enlightenment of your persona that you're playing during that session. So staying in character, super, super hard, but you want to definitely try and forget all those other elements. Try and forget the character sheets. Try and forget the rule books, right? Try and forget the dice. Try and forget all the environments and try and stay in character. It's super hard to do. It takes some practice. It takes some work. But hopefully, if you're working with some good dungeon master and some good other players, they can help you stay in character as well. The other thing that can be distracting is if you're trying to role play and your other players at the table or online aren't role playing, when they're using game terms like, oh, hey, here's a potion, it's going to give you, 2d4 plus 2 hit points back. Or, hey, here's my +1 sword. If they're using game terms and they're not role playing, that again is working against you because it's going to take you out of your envisionment of what's going on. Your role playing experience is super hard to role play when there's other people at the table that aren't role playing, that aren't, uh, you know, talking in character, and they're not staying in character. It can work against you as well. So just keep that in mind. Trying to keep reminding yourself that you're in a role playing experience. You're not you. You are not you during those 3 or 4 hours that you're playing your game session. You are somebody else. It's hard to do, but just keep that in mind that you want to keep saying to yourself, I'm role playing someone else. I am not. I am an elf on a monastery. I am in an ancient tomb. I am fighting an orc. Whatever it takes you to do, just try and remember to stay in character, talk like that character, envision what that character sees. Sometimes it even helps to close your mind when the DM is describing the scene. Close your eyes and just think about, envision what the DM is saying, so you can help put yourself there. Actually, episode number 4, I gave you some clues as to what we're going to talk about. In episode number 4, we're going to talk about ways to help you stay in character, ways to make you role play better, things to help you become more proficient role player. So we're going to talk about that in the next episode, but that's not what this episode is. But yeah, things that you can do to help yourself role play better, stay in character, ignore all the environments, everything that's on the table. I can see the map. I can see the miniatures on the map. I can see what's going on. And that if I see my character down on the screen, I realize that that's not me. I'm me. Oh, wait a minute. I'm not me. I'm him. Or that character. And it's super hard to do, but just try and remember to stay in character. Talk like your character. Think like your character would. Envision what your character is envisioning. And try and block out all the external environmental things that are working against you. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but you notice I've now got full screen me now. It only took me about a week, thank God, to figure out how to get the camera and the software to record the full screen webcam. So I got it working, and now you get to see full size me. Let me know in the comments section if you'd rather see mini me or big me, and if it matters at all. I'm not sure, but I thought it'd be more interesting to see more of me as opposed to mini me. So, staying in character, one of the 3 big things. Number 2 is not immersing yourself into your character's situation based upon the environment and the situation your character is currently dealing with, specifically the environmental things. So, for example, when you're walking down a dark hallway, you have to know whether or not your character has dark vision or some way to see in the dark, because there's nothing going to be more immersion breaking. And when the dungeon master says, how are you picking that lock when you can't see in the dark? That's right. I can't see unless I've got a torch because I'm a human or whatever the situation may be. So remember what your character abilities and what they can do so that you don't have situations like that. Let's say, for example, all of a sudden you're trying to swing over, hold onto a rope and swing across to the other side of a chasm. And the dungeon master says, well, I don't know how you're going to do that with both hands because you currently have a sword in one hand and you have a potion in another hand. How are you grabbing the rope to swing across? Yeah, you're right. I should have put that stuff away. You have to remember what your character has in their hands, whether they can see or not in the dark. A lot of big thing is what your character currently has on them, what they're using in their hands. Okay. Um, Another example is making sure you understand the environment. We talked about in a previous episode where the characters fall into a pit and they splash into a big pond and their equipment and everything is currently wet, but yet you tell the dungeon master, okay, it's dark in here, I'm going to light my torch. When you should realize, as we all would if the situation happened to us, if we fell into a big pond, everything we have is going to be currently wet. When we fall down, things can fall off of our characters, making sure we gather up all of our characters. We know the current situation that's going on. But nothing less immersion breaking than when you say, give a nice statement to the DM about what you're doing and then having the DM challenge you because you're currently, all your equipment's wet, right? Yes. How are you lighting this torch then? Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that. Let me, and then you're frazzled and you're trying to think of something else to do, and it can turn into a bad experience because you're like, oh no, that's right. I'm not currently thinking about what my character can see and what my character is doing. So try and remember this as things happen. And we're going to talk about this in the next episode, but a great resource is nothing more than a pen and a notepad. And as the DM is describing things, just highlight, you fall into a pond, pond wet, dark, blah, blah, blah. And then you can reference this and look at your notes before you make your statements. We're going to talk about that more in episode number 4, things that can help you not fall into these pitfalls of role playing. So number 2, immersing yourself in the environment. Nothing worse than the DM gives a nice scene about there's a statue in the center of the room and you see this devil standing there. Seems like flames are flickering around him and they're circling around or engulfing the statue is a 10-foot wide pool of lava which is bubbling and blah blah blah. And then as the player, I say, I walk over to this statue and I study and see if I recognize what kind of demon this actually is. And then the DM says, so you're going to stand in the lava to study this statue then? Again, he gave you the description of what was going on. He told you, there was lava around it. You either forgot or whatever, the situation happened, but you described a scene where you walked over to the statue, or the DM describes you're having the party's camping, there's a campfire, all your tents are there, standing between you and this orc is your campfire, and you say, I charge straight at the orc, swinging my blade, and the DM says, okay, you're running straight through the campfire then. Oh, yes, you're right. God, I got to be careful about these things. So understanding what's going on around your environment, because again, we don't want to get into our fantasy novel and we're reading things about what had happened and then going, well, how can they do that? Because this character would currently be standing on a pool of lava, or this character is charging through the campfire, or whatever the situation happens to be. Nothing less immersive than when Veritas lights his torch as his to to Veritas lights his torch in this small room, so the darkness goes away. And then the player thinks to himself, well, wait a minute, didn't these guys just fall into a pond? Shouldn't everything be wet? This story isn't making any sense, right? So you don't want to have those immersion breaking things that happen while you're role playing. So understanding the environment, what's going on, understanding what's in your character's hands, understanding what equipment you currently possess. There's nothing worse than, I pull out my shield and my mace and I'm going to attack this goblin that's standing in front of me. And the DM replies back, well, remember earlier in this adventure you fell into the pond and you lost your shield? Where did you get a shield from? Yeah, that's right. I lost my shield. Yeah. So things like that can be a pitfall for your role-playing experience. It's going to take the immersion out of what's going on. So just remember, try and stay in character. Everything is working against you, right? Everything you see, everything you hear is working against you, trying to remind you that you are you, not this other character. And then when you have things where you don't realize that, yes, I can't actually do this because I don't have a hand free, or I go to drink my potion, but that's right, earlier in the adventure I used my potion. Or I cast my scroll of flames. That's right, I used it already. Damn, hang on a second. So understanding your immersion yourself in the character's shoes and the environment and everything that's going on with the character. And the third thing, and this is the biggie, and anyone that knows anything about role-playing are just waiting for me to bring it up. Of course, we're talking about metagaming. If you're not familiar with metagaming, I will tell you what metagaming is. If you know about metagaming, you know the pitfalls and what it can cause. And this is why this is a biggie. Metagaming is taking what you know as the player and applying it to your character, right? So if the dungeon master has all the figures laid out on the table, or you're playing online and you see the map with all the figures, and one of the goblins leaves and runs up and around the corner and disappears, but you still see it on the mini-map, or you still see his icon on the table, you, the player, can see that. But your character can't, because he's ran around the corner. Your character has no idea what's going on with that goblin. So you're taking what you know and applying it to what your character knows. My guy's going to run around the corner and swing my sword at this goblin standing there. I know he's right there around the corner. How do you know that? How does your character know that information? He doesn't. So taking your own knowledge and applying it to your character. And this is a toughie. This is a hard one, to try and separate yourself from what you know and what your character knows. You know that your character has, right there, a 15 strength. You know that. You're pretty strong, right? Your character doesn't know he's got a 15 strength. Maybe your character knows he's a pretty strong guy, but he doesn't know he's got a 15 strength, which is going to give him a +1 attack. Or maybe your starship captain knows that he's got, a +5 in piloting. Your starship captain doesn't know he's got a +5 in piloting. Maybe he knows that he can, steer the ship pretty well. I guess that would be a better way of putting it. Separating what your character knows from what you know from what your character knows. Another example is, this happens all the time. The party is now resting, camping outside for the night. All the players are asleep except for usually one of their guards that are guarding the party. DM rolls and then explains to the player, yes, so you hear coming up around the north end of your camp, there's a huge rock, and you see a leopard leap up on the rock. He growls at you, and then he dives back into the darkness. Shit. He starts waking up all the other characters. Hey, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. And what happens? One of the characters that was sound asleep, I grab my sword and I run up to that rock. Why? Why would your character do that? You're taking what you know because you heard the DM tell this other player that was awake. You're taking what you know and you're applying it to what your character knows. Your character would have no idea. I'm sound asleep. Whoa, shoot, what the hell are you waking me up for? What? God damn. What? Oh, you're gonna tell me, up by the rock there was a leopard. Oh, okay, now I know. Shit, draw my sword. Till the other character tells you what had happened, you have no idea, but if you take the knowledge that you had heard the DM say to the other characters and apply that to that situation, that's metagaming. You're taking what you know and you're applying it to your character. Another good example is if you are familiar with the rules and you're very familiar with the monsters, you're an experienced Dungeons and Dragons player, or you're an experienced Star Trek player or Star Wars or whatever the situation is. You now know you've fought many of these same creatures. You know all their stats inside and out. And this specifically comes when you're talking about a monster that's got some kind of resistance or special power or something like that. Your character has never experienced what the player has. He maybe have never fought a dragon before. He doesn't know the dragon has a tail whip power. So for your character to yell out, spread out everyone, if he slams his tail down on us, we're all going to die. Or, hey, this troll is going to regenerate if we don't hit him with fire. How does your character know this information? How is it possibly, if your character has never experienced a troll before, how is he going to know, hey, we got to kill this thing with fire? Now, maybe they learn that. They slash the thing and then it dies and then they're getting ready to leave and the thing his wounds start closing together. Wait a minute now, what's going on here? So you go over and you experiment and try and figure out what's going on. If you fought a creature before that has damage reduction 15 against pierce attacks, oh, okay, well, your character's not going to know that. I walk up, I stab the thing. Doesn't, the DM can describe. Your spear goes through the skeleton, chipping off a few fragments of bones. And your character can learn this information. Oh, wait a minute now. The dwarf, I just seen the dwarf hit him with his warhammer and bone splitters everywhere. I'm hitting him with my spear, or I'm shooting him with my arrow, and we're only hitting him a few fragments off him. Oh, well, I need to use a weapon that's a solid weapon. The character doesn't know it's a pierce weapon or a bludgeoning weapon. He knows it's a solid weapon as opposed to a spear, which is a stab weapon, right? So maybe your characters learn this information, but if you start off with, okay, guys, we're fighting a troll here, we need to use lots of fire against this thing, that's taking what you know as the player, the fact that you've looked these creatures up, you've played against them, you've fought against these guys before, and you're applying that information to your character. Your character, again, wouldn't know things like, oh, yeah, this guy's just an NPC. Your character has no idea what an NPC is, a non-player character. It doesn't know what an NPC is. If you're just saying, oh, let's go talk to this guy because he's probably going to give us a quest, he's an NPC, might join us or whatever, that's taking what you know about how the game runs and the game system, and you're applying it to what your character knows. Let's say I'm playing a dwarf character. and I happen to be 30 feet from the door. Well, I know as a player I can only move 25 feet per turn, or per round. And I look at the battle map and I go, let's see, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. The door is 30 feet away. I can only move 25. I'm not going to be able to make it to the door. So instead of making it to the door, running over towards the door, I'm going to take another swing at the ghoul that I'm fighting and see if I can kill it because I can't make it to the door anyways. So again, that's taking what you know, because you know the stats of your character, you know everything about them, and you're applying it to what your character knows. Your character is not going to know. If they're in a situation where they're extremely wounded and they're fighting this thing and it doesn't seem like they're able to do much damage to it, they're going to run for the door. Whether or not they make it to the door or not, they're not going to be like, yeah, that's 30 feet away. I'm not going to be able to make it. No, they're going to try and run their butt off towards the door and see if they can get to the door. So taking what you know and adding it to what your character knows. Let's see if I can. Oh, yes, another good one. As you're adventuring and gathering up all this treasure and loot and carrying things and adding them to your equipment sheet, you're like, okay, guys, someone else is going to have to carry this scale mail because I can only carry 256 pounds before I become over encumbered. So if somebody else wants this scale mail, then you're going to have to carry it on yourself because I'm almost at I'm going to start to be encumbered and I'm going to start taking penalties to my attack rolls and my stealth checks or whatever the situation is. So again, you're taking in-game knowledge from the rules or in-game knowledge from uh, monsters or equipment or whatever the situation is. You find a set of scale mail and you find a set of banded mail. And your characters are looking at them and you're like, this one gives me +5, this one gives me +6. I'm going to put the one that's +6 on. How is your character going to know which one works better for that character? Now, maybe he puts on the banded mail and tries it, next time he has a fight, he realizes, hey, this deflected the enemy's blows much better, and maybe he learns that information, or maybe his history, maybe he was a soldier at one point, and so they had armor training when he was in the army, or whatever the situation is. But if I'm a mage, or let's say I'm playing an assassin character, I'm not going to know if chainmail or banded mail might be better. So it depends on the situation. Nothing's written in stone, but what you don't want to do is you don't want to apply what you know and apply it to what your character knows. You don't want to add all that stuff in. Let's say the DM, your party's traveling down a windy path. They come up against an old man. They start talking with the old man. He starts to look at them strange, and they realize his teeth start growing very long, and he has this bloodthirst about him. His eyes start to get bloodshot. His fingernails start to grow very long. His skin starts to turn leathery. Okay, we all know what a vampire looks like. We've experienced him through novels and through books and movies and magazines or whatever. We've seen him. We are now in the 21st century. We're familiar with what a vampire looks like. Does your character know about what a vampire looks like? Is he going to yell and say, there's a vampire standing here in front of us? Now, again, your DM might have a world where vampires are the main enemies and everybody knows about vampires and they know the way to defeat them because of the history that happened on this world. The vampires 300 years ago started taking over, and there was no way to defeat them because no one learned how to defeat them. No one knew how to defeat them. There wasn't, there wasn't this knowledge written down. And through the years, finally, they started realizing that vampires could be hit by silver weapons. And, garlic repels them. And if you stab them in a heart with a wood object, a stake or whatever, that will kill them. And so the humans finally started to learn these things, and they started to repel back and push the vampires back. Now, if that happened in your DM's world, then it's perfectly fine for your character to have knowledge about vampires and all the things that they can use against them. And all the, they can take all the world history and all the knowledge that had happened previous to them on this, in this setting, or DM's world, and they can use that for themselves. And they can apply that. But if you don't have a world like that, if vampires are not common for anyone, if you go into a village out in the middle of nowhere, yes, I need 3 silver short swords. We need some garlic and possibly some wood stakes. Can we get these created real quick for us? The DM's going to be like, you're using your knowledge and applying it to your character because your character doesn't know any of this information. He should stop you from doing that, right? So think about it. And if you're not sure, ask your dungeon master, hopefully in character, you know, as he starts, the DM gives a description of the player turning into this vampire. You might say, I frightened. I'm thinking about what this person is turning into. It must be some kind of evil form. And then, if you say that, the DM might reply back, yes, you've heard of something. It's called a vampire. Ah, okay. So now, you can start role-playing back and forth with the DM to find out what you know and what you don't know about vampires. The DM might say, you have no idea what this creature is turning into. It might be a demon. It might be a devil of some kind. It might be an angel. You're just not sure as you watch it turn. His skin turns wrinkly. He now has these huge fangs. His eyes start to slant. Whatever the scene is. So what you want to do is just remember to separate what you know as a person from what your character knows. It's one of the hardest things to do. It's one of the hardest things to do, and I'm just going to leave with this short story from you guys. I've been playing since 1982. So what is that? 82, 92, 02, 12, so like 37, 38 years, whatever it's been. So I've been playing a long time. And as I play, I can think back about special moments that had happened. I don't remember every character. I don't remember every player. I don't remember every session. I don't remember what happens in all these sessions. Are you kidding me? My memory's bad enough as it is. But there's a few of them that stand out. And one of the moments that stands out to me is when we had a metagame moment with one of my face-to-face role-playing games. The party decided to separate. Some of the party went around to the left, some of the other party went around to the right. It was like a big circular hallway. So they figured they would meet around on the other end, but this way they could make sure that both hallways were clear. So part of the party went to the left, part of the party went to the right. So I decided we'll role play in the party to the left. We'll tell them what had happened, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, they came up to a door down the hallway. They opened up the door. The DM read them what the door description was and what was in the room and everything. And the players decided to go into the room to investigate, and they fell through a trap door that had a bunch of spikes, and one of the player characters ended up dying, another one was severely wounded, etc., etc., etc. So we then stopped, and we went over to the other group. They continued up the hallway. They see a door. The DM then goes and gives them the exact same description. Basically, what had happened was the big circle was a mirror image of one another. So all the players on the right-hand side knew that if they entered the room, the same thing was going to happen to their characters. So as soon as the DM read that description, the anguish on their faces, knowing me, I know what's about ready to happen. I know that if I enter this room, we're gonna fall into the pit, and we're possibly gonna die from this situation. What am I gonna do? So the player was trying to be as honest as he can. I can still remember the player's name. Eric Scheibeck was playing this character, and he did a great job. Role playing it out. He asked the DM, "Is there anything I see in the room that would at least let my character know that there was something weird about this room, or there was something unusual about this room, or do I see blood spatters on the wall? I look around the room? Does it look like it's safe to enter? And all that." After some checks and some rolls, they felt it was safe to enter, and the anguish on just knowing, oh, this is gonna be bad. Well, I enter into the room. And that's the moments you want to remember. Okay? It actually turned out to be a good situation. It was a good learning experience. And it was a memorable moment. And that's what you should be shooting for as you play these role-playing games. Memorable moments that you want to talk about, that you think about, that you share with people 10 years from now, 20 years from now. You want to have these moments that you can say, "Oh, I remember when this happened. I don't remember half the characters. I don't remember half of their stats, but there's a few moments in the last 38 years that stick out." And that was one of them. And that was a metagame moment. The player knew without a doubt what was going to happen, but because he was playing his character, separating the knowledge between what he knew and what his character knew, he did what he had to do, and that was walk in the room and take the brunt of it. Well, like I said, it ended up being okay because the party, the players, afterwards they continued down around the end of the hall, and they ended up meeting again, and they ended up talking about what had happened, and the players, or the characters, then decided it was not a good idea to ever separate again. Try to stay together so we don't have situations like this happen again. So, like I said, it was a moment that I'll never forget. That session, is something that stands out. And even to this day, this probably happened 15 years ago, probably, but I can still remember it. It was a great moment. It wasn't the event was important, obviously, but it wasn't the event. It was the look on the characters' faces, because they heard what the DM gave them, the exact same description, the exact same everything that they just saw happen, and just watching how they handled it, how they did it, and the outcome of what had happened. So, yeah, that's my story about metagaming. You don't want to do it. It can break the immersion of what's going on. And like I said, it can actually be something that 10 years from now, 15 years from now, you remember the moment it happens, where I didn't metagame. I didn't say, well, yeah, we should continue down this hallway because going into this room is not a good idea. Let's keep going. We'll meet up with the other group, then we'll decide what we're going to do. No, the characters, the players played the character like they didn't know what had just happened. They had no knowledge. They didn't experience what the players had experienced. And it's watching their faces and the excitement and the anguish, knowing that my character could possibly die. This could be the end of my character as I know it. And this could be the end of him in this story. But I'm going to do it the way my character, and I'm going to play him like I know only what he knows. And like I said, hopefully you learn something from this, and you experience great wonders, joys of role playing, just like I have. So uh, hopefully this episode helped you. Again, the three things, just outline them real quick. Pitfalls for role playing, things that you have to really think about while you're engaging in your gaming session, things that you want to try to remember and focus to not do these things, or staying in character. You want to stay in character. You don't want all these external, the rule book. Okay, I'm going to look up this rule because, it just doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, okay. All these things are working against you. You're not traveling down a dusty road. You're not in the desert. You're not outside the planet of Gizma, or whatever the situation may be. You are sitting at your kitchen table, or you're sitting at your desk online playing, or whatever. All these things are working against you. Try and stay focused. And even if the other characters are not role playing, try and stay in your character, and maybe you can convert them into, hey, just tell the DM what you're doing, what your character's doing. Just explain it to them like I'm doing it. Because the other players are going to see the DM interacting with the role player much better than the other characters. And the other characters are going to be like, wow, that's cool. Maybe I should try that. Number two, make sure you are immersed in the situation of your character and you know what's going on with him and his environment around him. Make sure you know, if an enemy casts blindness on you, and then you're like, well, I'm going to run over to the statue and I'm going to pry out the gems in the statue's eyes, and the DM's going to remind you, you're currently blind. Remember that? Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay. So remember what's going on with your character. Like I said, take some notes down. If you're blinded or whatever, write that down on a sheet of paper. Bring a notebook, write that down. Currently blinded. When you're not blinded anymore, scratch that off. If you're wet, write down wet. Right? Whatever notes help you to remember what's going on in the situation, because you don't want. There's nothing worse than breaking the immersion than when the DM calls you out on something. How are you doing this when you currently, I'm drinking my healing potion, I'm going to restore, and you're rolling dice, and the DM's like, you already used your healing potion. Remember after you fought the bugbear? Oh, yeah, that's right. Shoot. Cleric, hey, I need some healing over here. So when the DM calls you out on something, that's, oh my gosh, So just remember to immerse yourself in your environment. And number three, metagaming, taking and separating what you know from what your character knows. Three ultra important things. Keep those in mind when you're at the gaming table. Write those three things down on the top of your notepad. Okay? Stay in character. Stay in character. Underline, explanation point, underneath that one. Immerse in current character situation. situation. I always spell that one wrong. Situation. Underline, explanation point. Meta gaming. Write that one down. Explanation point. 3 or 4 explanation points. Separate what I know from what a character knows. Have that on the top of your sheet so you can keep looking back at it, referring back to it. It might help you. We're going to talk about more things that'll actually help you in the next episode when we get to episode number 4 of our role-playing experience. Hopefully this has been helpful for you guys. That's all this is. It's just to help you guys realize, hey, you can do this. You can role-play. You can do it. You might not be a professional the first time, but every time you do it, you can be better and better and better. And hopefully you'll find out this is something you can like and you enjoy, because you are doing nothing more than creating a wonderful story that you are director of. You are in control of the story. And you want to do things, say things, act like it's a fantasy novel that you're creating yourself. And by doing things like not staying in character, not immersing yourself in the current situation with your character, or metagaming, these are things that are not going to show up in a fantasy novel. These are not going to show up. So you want to stay away from those things. Next episode, we're going to talk about things to help you. We've already covered some of them, but we'll go into detailed examples in our next episode. I thank you very much for watching. This is your host, ID Jester. Hugs and kisses to all my friends out there. We'll see you guys next time.